Philip Ingram's still with me. Delighted to be joined in the studio now. We'll sit by Andrew Rosindell, Conservative MP and Shadow Foreign Minister. Very good morning to you.
It's Andrew, not Andre.
I did hang on. Did I say
said Andre? Anyway, it's Andrew.
It's because I was just reading some news about the former French President Nicolas Sarkozy found guilty of criminal conspiracy in the case over Libya. I mean, name me a French president who hasn't been found guilty of something, but there we are. Andrew Rosindell is here. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk first of all about immigration. A family of three are the first, one in, one out. So far, it's 3 in, 4 out of migrants in this little exchange scheme we've got with Emmanuel Macron. At the same time, we've got the news of an Afghan dinghy migrant who arrived in 2022, claiming he couldn't possibly get back to Afghanistan. It was so unsafe, granted asylum, and then sodded off there on an 8-week holiday last year. Home Office does absolutely nothing about it. He's still here. What do you make of both those stories?
So I think the entire situation is an absolute failure of the overall British state. All governments and the civil servants, all officials involved in this have
I think you were saying
failed.
This when the Tories were in charge too, to be fair.
Absolutely. No, I've said all political parties have administered what has been a complete failure of policy in terms of protecting our borders, preventing people coming into our country that shouldn't be here. So the British people have really lost patience in this. The stories you've just mentioned, the new policy of 1 in, 1 out, well, no one believes that's going to have any serious effect. The idea that an Afghan refugee comes here fleeing persecution or potential persecution and goes to Afghanistan on holiday, I think it shows that the whole thing is a complete and utter shambles. And what's needed is for our government, it's currently a Labour government, I'm not sure how long it will be a Labour government, the way they're going.
We'll come to that.
But what is needed is the government to act in the interests of the United Kingdom. Get rid of the ideology, get rid of all the blocks to solve these issues, legislation that we've passed, ECHR and all the other things that we've discussed.
But why would you ever think they would actually do that? I mean, with the Conservatives, I thought there was a will, vaguely, but absolutely no willingness to find the way, certainly in time. With this lot in Labour, for a Labour government, I don't even think there's a will. Most of those people, when I've interviewed them long in the past as a journalist, they're pretty much open borders through and through. They don't really think it's an issue that people come here either legally or illegally to this country and get to stay here. They really don't.
No, they don't believe in it. They don't really want to protect our borders. They don't really want to get tough on immigration and have a sensible immigration policy that actually benefits Britain. Of course, this all started under Tony Blair. All of this massive, I think outrageous policy of open borders effectively is what we've had since those years. The Conservatives promised in every manifesto in all those elections, with all the different prime ministers we had, to do something about this.
Bring it down to the tens of thousands net migration.
We failed to do it. Any prime minister, I think, in modern times who saw the importance of protecting British borders and limiting immigration was Mrs Thatcher. And under her time in office, she emphasised the need for those who do come to our country to integrate into British society and to limit the numbers of people coming in.
Well, one person who definitely apparently said one thing and did another when it came to immigration was Boris Johnson. He's done a big interview with the Sun's Harry Cole, who was talking about it on Mike Graham's show earlier today. Boris Johnson defending the Boris wave of 1.2 million arrivals to this country from abroad, largely from the Indian subcontinent. Limited people coming from Europe, but I don't think people were saying, what we really need to do is not have, unlimited migration from Europe, but let's just take it from the rest of the world. That wasn't what the British people wanted when they said, let's take back control in the Brexit referendum and indeed in the 2019 election that gave Boris Johnson the premiership, confirmed him in it. I'm sorry, but he's been defending that and saying, people are concerned only about illegal migration, not legal migration. Do you think he's right?
No, I'm afraid he's not. So it isn't just about those coming in through illegal means on the boats or however. Lorries it was before, now it's boats.
There's still lorries as well.
There's still lorries too. People are worried about the overall increase in the population, which is unsustainable and is not wanted. And also, we have harmed our own economy by bringing people in who are ultimately not economically productive in the sense they're not overall contributed into our society.
We were told they were a benefit to our economy.
We were told, but that was not true either. And also, Julia, it's the cultural changes in towns and cities across the country. My constituency is Romford. It's just on the outer edges of Greater London. It's Essex, as you know. But people there are very disgruntled at the failure of all governments to tackle this problem. They see the changes in our local community, and this is replicated across the country. So my party needs to step up. We need to be radical. We need to get a grip on this seriously. And I think that some of the failures of previous Conservative governments need to be called out.
Well, there's an awful lot of talk about Kemi Badenoch's leadership of the party and looking ahead to, say, the May local and Welsh Assembly and Scottish parliamentary elections, whether or not she will survive past next summer. Lots of questions also now about the Prime Minister, whether he will survive. It is an extraordinary situation that only 14 months into his premiership, with a huge, 160 majority, that Keir Starmer should be facing a possible threat. But Andy Burnham, apparently the king across the water, the mayor of Greater Manchester, is apparently looking to challenge Keir Starmer. He's really making no bones about it. He's been quite honest about it. Of course, he does need to, find a by-election to fight, get himself nominated for the seat, win the seat, and then win a parliamentary, challenge and then a parliamentary election to become leader of the Labour Party. Do you think he would make a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer? Would you be more worried about him being the next Labour Prime Minister and the Tories having to fight him?
I think for the country's sake, I think pretty much anybody would be a better Prime Minister than the one we've got at the moment. We're heading into a very dark place as a country. In every area of policy, this government is failing. It's failing the entire nation. So the quicker Keir Starmer leaves office, the better.
You think he specifically is the problem? And if so,
no,
why?
I think it's the entire Labour Party, because they are wedded to this left-wing socialist ideology, which is an absolute calamity. It's dragging our country down, and we need a serious change.
Isn't there
an
argument? I remember a number of Conservatives saying to me on and off air about, if you don't vote Tory at the next election, your audience, they're going to end up with the Labour government. And I remember one of the arguments I put back to them, and many on social media as well, pointing out, maybe, you lot needed to be punished for the failures on issues like immigration and the like, and secondly, and tax as well, and secondly, I was always of the view, maybe the country needed a little dose of what a Labour government would be like, because this idea that, they can promise everything and then, oh, look, it turns out government's a little bit harder than you thought. There are harder choices, and you've got exactly the same financial constraints that the Tories had faced. Do you not think there's actually a strong argument that actually this government playing itself out over 5 years might be a little bit of medicine that the country and the voters need?
Well, it's only when we get a Labour government that people realise how bad it is. Now, Tony Blair actually did quite well to begin with, and people thought he was not a bad Prime Minister.
I voted for him in '97, along with lots of other people.
OK, I didn't. But anyway, he got in, and we are living with the legacy that he left. He left a terrible legacy for this country, and we are still working within the new constitutional framework that he imposed on us, I think, in quite an undemocratic way. And part of this open borders immigration policy was really the kind of policy that started under his premiership. So the Labour Party needs to go from office, but no party at the moment can be guaranteed that they could stop a left-wing coalition. If Labour lost pretty much half their seats, they could potentially go into a coalition with Lib Dems, with Greens, propped up by SNP, Plaid Cymru. I mean, who knows what's coming down the road? But we need a right-of-centre government, and my belief very strongly is that those on the right of centre of British politics need to start talking.
Well, I was going to say, because you guys on the polls right now are not going to be that government.
Julia, as you know, I believe that our country should come first, and there are times when all parties have to think about what's best for the United Kingdom, and absolutely we need a change of government, and we need a right-of-centre government.
Here's the thing.
Whatever makeup
Lots of people have gone to reform because they don't like the Tories anymore. The Tories joining forces with the reform could damage both the Conservatives. Your Lib Dem wing, third of them, they head off and vote Lib Dem or Labour or Green, whatever it is, and then Reform lose a load of their votes. You're guaranteeing the next Labour government at that point, aren't you?
Well, actually, I'm not coming with one prescribed plan for this, but I do think there's a mood in the country to go back to sound economic policy, reducing public expenditure, seriously dealing with immigration, repealing a lot of the Blair legislation, getting rid of the woke agenda completely because that's dividing our society. Net zero, well, we know that's got to go. That's completely unsustainable. And if sensible politicians on the right of centre can come together and work out how we can implement such a plan, I think the British people would thank us.
I love the sound of all of that. You're a shadow minister. I mean, some of the things like you said on net zero, that's not party policy. You're going far further than your own leader.
I talk on foreign affairs. I'm a shadow foreign affairs minister, and so here I'm talking as a Conservative MP, representing my constituents and telling you, Julia, what they're saying.
Okay.
And they're saying what I'm saying.
I just want to ask you very briefly about Zelensky. Talking about foreign affairs, President Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, spoke at the United Nations yesterday. I think such a time rather better than Donald Trump, who flashed a whole load of news stories with his big speech. Zelensky's biggest warning was basically, having looked a bit chipper after what Donald Trump had to say to him and publicly about basically losing patience with Putin and Zelensky and Ukrainians should take back their land and more. We're not quite sure what he means by that. But he's warning that, basically Putin's threat is not just to Ukraine. He's going further afield. We've seen these jets going into NATO airspace. We've seen these cyber attacks. No one is ruling out cyber attacks coming from, Russian paid bots or the Russian government. How big is that threat, do you think?
So I think that Donald Trump, to start with, believed that he could sit down with Putin, sort it out, end the war and move on. Actually, we all hoped that could be achieved.
It was never going to happen.
But it hasn't happened. And I think the President of the United States is now seeing that Putin is someone that you simply cannot trust. The Russians are always playing games, and we hear today that there's a cyber attack in Denmark. The other day we saw something happening in Estonia. I think that at a time like this, NATO countries need to stand together.
And do what?
We need to support each other when we're under attack.
And
that's the entire purpose of NATO, to make it clear to the Soviet Union or Russia, it's almost like the Soviet Union again, because that's what Putin wants to create. He wants to recreate that system.
How do we make it clear?
So we have to make it clear that NATO is not going to be soft.
How do we make it clear?
Well, first of all, every country needs to pay their way. And Germany hasn't been paying its way.
We don't.
Well, we have paid our way far more than others. But we need to increase our investment in defence far more than we've been doing in the last 20, 30 years, when we had this so-called peace dividend, which actually has been a false hope. We need to start rebuilding our armed forces, investing our defences. Deterrence is the only way to deal with Putin.